Hi everyone, I'm Shani. I manage Octopus Strategic Partners, and I'm really excited to welcome you all to our third social media workshop. Joining me today is Jen Gutman, Octopus Director of Social Strategy, and we have a very special guest and a very great friend of ours, Howard Sewell. He is the president and co-founder over at Spear Marketing Group. The series that we are going through today, this workshop series, is really designed to give our audience some tips and tricks on the trade, not only to get us through this very weird time that we're all living in, but also for success beyond. And today's session is going to be focused on getting the most and getting more out of marketing automation. As I mentioned, the slides. I'm Shani. We have with us Howard and Jen Gutman as well. So to kind of get started, and I want to start with you, Howard. And again, just thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's great to be here.
It's always a pleasure. We love speaking with you. We love hearing what you have to share with us. And as we know,
I also love following Howard on LinkedIn.
Howard,
oh goodness.
Howard has a lot of good content on LinkedIn. We should have plugged in his handle. I'll plug in your handle later. But we know that you are the president and one of the co-founders over at Spear Marketing Group, which is a leading full-service B2B demand generation agency. And I know that you and your team do a lot of work in the marketing automation space. So you definitely have a good sense of how B2B companies are working with and utilizing marketing automation platforms. Would you be able to share with us today, and I'm sure you will be, can you share with us some of the things that you've noticed in terms of how B2B marketers are leveraging marketing automation platforms and where they're falling a bit short?
Sure. Yeah, in general, I'd summarize it by saying that there's some pretty gross underutilization of marketing automation in the marketplace. We at Spear did a survey, let's see, 3 years ago, where we surveyed a couple of hundred B2B marketers to get a sense of sort of at what level people were using the technology. And overall, we graded people based on how what they were doing with the systems measured up against, generally accepted best practices. And I think the overall score we gave people was like a C+. It was people were barely kind of scratching the surface of what the technology was capable of. And you would think in the succeeding 3 years that things would have improved, given that we're all in and around MarTech now, and marketing automation is really, it's long been kind of the foundation of the marketing stack for a lot of B2B companies. But then there was another survey that a UK company ran, I think about 6 months ago, where the results were just as dismal, meaning there's just a lot of companies that are out there that are, and it's not specific to one platform. So this is not a Marketo issue, a Pardot issue, an Eloqua, HubSpot, whatever. It seems pretty generally people are not using, as you say here, marketing automation to its fullest potential. Yeah. And there's a lot of reasons, debatable, I'm sure, as to why that's the case, but it seems to be fairly widespread. So, yeah.
Definitely.
Want me to talk to some of these points?
Yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit, because it's a pain that we see on our end as well when we work with a couple of different people in the marketing space. We work with social media managers, we work with marketing ops, we work with the directors. Each one of them has their own KPIs, their own, whatever it is that they're being measured on. And we see it on our end that whenever it does come to needing to do a little bit more in marketing automation, there's a little bit of that pushback. And I want to hear from you where you think that pushback kind of comes from.
Pushback in what sense, Shani, do you mean?
Pushback in the sense of not necessarily like, we don't think that this is valuable, or we don't see, or we don't have the time. It's kind of just, I think
it never happens.
It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And I think and Jen, I think you also know this from your days of being CSM and also sales at Octopus, it just doesn't happen. And there's no real reason that we get as to why it doesn't happen.
So here's my theory on that point specifically. And I say this, where we get involved with market automation clients is typically post-sales. So we do some implementations, but more as a professional services company, our involvement is typically post-sale. So people have had the software for 3 months, 6 months, a year, sometimes 2 years, and are looking to get more from the system, and we come in and help them do that. And what I see, and this is kind of a generalization, but a typical scenario is people buy the software. There's usually a pent-up demand for what that software does. So people, whether they're migrating from a new system, or maybe they're a startup or a new company getting marketing automation for the first time, there's a bunch of stuff that they want to do. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of campaigns that need to be run, a bunch of pent-up demand for that software. And so companies tend to, in my experience, immediately go to sort of tactical campaign mode with the software. So it's, okay, we finally got it installed. We've got these webinar invitations. We've got the newsletter to send out. We can send out, an announcement to this list, et cetera, et cetera. And they never quite get out in front of that campaign engine. Yeah. And what I refer to here in the third bullet is that companies fail to establish a strategic vision for how they want to use marketing automation. Yeah. More often it's sort of they plug it in and they're immediately off to the races, sending emails. And quite literally, we work with companies that I won't name that have had these systems for, 2 years, and all they've done is send webinar invitations.
That's what I'm saying. They get stuck in the email loop, I think.
That's exactly right. And they never get in front of it to where they're able to kind of take a step back and say, okay, why am we investing the money in this? What are the business results that we're looking to get from this? What are the success metrics? How do we measure our return on investment for marketing automation? It ends up being sort of this self-fulfilling prophecy, because all you're doing is sending out emails. Jen, I cut you off.
No, it's so what I wanted to share is that recently we actually had a very interesting discussion with a man named Jonathan Lawson, who is part of the law and business faculty at the Manchester Metropolitan University. And he was talking to us about kind of small businesses, resources, and experience. And in my experience, I've worked in both kind of large corporate companies and startup, and I'd like to make the case, and I don't know, Howard, if you're seeing this as well, but there does seem to be kind of a glass ceiling of experience in a lot of different roles. So while you shared that the MarTech stack has been around for a while and marketing automation is not really anything new, I think the skill set of using it
totally agree.
Is not up to par. And I can even speak on my own behalf. I'm a social media manager. And when I first started, when my boss would be like, hey, can you do X in Marketo? The look of fear on my face was like, what? Yeah. Marketo? Marketing automation? What am I going to do with that? And the fact that I had experience in marketing, but I'm not IT trained, and MarTech stacks usually require some level of technical anything, and I even when selling Octopost, right, I would have to assure my marketing counterparts not to stress out when they see a small piece of code to put somewhere. But it's kind of like this in the small businesses, maybe the lack of experience, but also even in the bigger teams. So I would like to make the argument that perhaps most marketers aren't using marketing automation to its fullest potential because it's simply a fact of you don't know what you don't know. So if anyone managing a larger team or even smaller teams could invest in like a retraining or a training or kind of a base point, and what's the new kind of standard for a marketer, not just a digital marketer, but marketers in general, would that help get better use out of these phenomenal pieces of technology that can really do incredible things when people know how to work them?
So I think I completely agree. I think there's two layers to that point, though. One, as we mentioned here in the first bullet point, there's absolutely a dearth of experienced marketing ops talent out there. And even in the context of the global economy the way it is today, that's still very much the case. It's rare that you find people running a Marketo or Pardot or Naliqua HubSpot that have more than maybe 2 or 3 years of experience. One, because those people traditionally have been high demand and they move around a lot. Mm-hmm. So they're constantly being sort of replaced. There's a lot of shuffle. And it's just, it goes very much to the issue that you're describing. But the other layer that I would say is that there are, for as much as there are people that do know how to use these technologies, there are fewer still that know it at the level of how am I going to use this technology to solve business problems. So you can know how to use a Marketo, you can know how to set up a campaign, you can know which buttons to press, you can know how to code an email. But if I ask you, you know, hey, I want to do a nurture campaign, what should that look like? What should the segmentation be? The kind of who gets what when questions, and how to structure and segment and that campaign, you know, offer strategy. That sort of thing is completely off the radar in terms of skill set at most companies. And that's where I think companies suffer most. It's not so much from people not knowing which buttons to press, but it's knowing it at a level of how am I going to use this technology to kind of achieve a certain you know, business goal. I also mentioned here, I think we need to point the finger somewhat at the vendors, and I excuse them to an extent, and you know, we have well, I excuse Octopus, of course, from this discussion, but I think, you know, the marketing automation space has been very competitive, right, and has been for some while. That only picked up when, you know, Oracle bought Eloqua and Adobe bought Marketo and Salesforce bought Pardot, etc. And so it's a real kind of turf battle out there for, you know, net new licenses. And so you've got 3 companies there. You can throw HubSpot into the mix as well, that are really doing battle for kind of those net new clients, understandably from a business perspective. But I think what suffers in that, what I'm perceiving as a business model that's very kind of sales driven. It's very much about, you know, net new licenses versus kind of, I would argue, making those customers successful. That also, I think, kind of, it's an element here. You know, when each of those 3 companies got acquired, as always happens, a lot of talent gets dispersed right out into the market. And so you've got a relative lack of, again, experienced people, even at those companies themselves, in CSM type roles, training type roles, strategic consultant type roles. And so I wouldn't, you know, I don't want to paint a picture where these people are just sort of selling the software and leaving people to fend for themselves. It's not that, but I think the business focus of those companies is such in the current climate that customer success might be taking a backseat to, you know, where are we going to get our next net new customer?
Yeah. I hear that. It's the technology is constantly evolving, whereas the training and the skill set isn't keeping up with it. And I think it's very easy for these technologies to continue to expand and build off of their, what once probably started as email marketing only, and people getting stuck with email marketing, but paying for the full suite of things.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah. Jen, did you have anything else that I feel like I cut you off also as you were starting to say something?
No. I was just thinking out loud. I wanted to say that was an interesting, the vendor piece is an interesting piece to look at. And I think especially as a marketer in COVID-19 times and you know, these times when you're seeing, you know, empathy marketing and customer experience marketing initiatives be at the forefront of marketing, right? Staying authentic and really putting the customer first. I think it's interesting that, right, this, again, we understand from a business perspective, why the net new licenses are important and why companies would focus a business initiative there. But when it comes to putting the customer first, I think I was just going to say it's an interesting thought even in the marketing automation space, because again, just being in those shoes right now, I don't know, marketing to the customer. I'm not really quite sure what I'm trying to get out, but I think the timing is again, even with Octopus marketing initiatives, we've definitely taken a an interesting approach to work more alongside of our customers when it comes to content and when it comes to certain components of the platform. So I'm not sure in various times where if that's still the same business model or if it's still the heavily lean on one, and I'll just leave it at that.
Well, now we've painted a dark picture.
No, I know. Let's move on to the next topic, guys. We're not done. It doesn't just end on
Yeah,
this
let's brighten this up a little bit.
So the two of us, both of our organizations, we do work very closely with B2B organizations. So we have seen it all. Like we've said, we've seen those companies that really excel in marketing and those that are just getting by with the bare minimum. So especially with what's going on today, we're finding that a lot of companies are in a position where they're working with minimal manpower and resources. What, I guess, would your advice be, Howard, for these types of companies? Where might they be able to find successes if it's not, if it can't right now come from within?
Yeah, two main areas here. One is going to sound very self-serving, but it kind of, in a way, also kind of harkens back to the point we were just making about kind of people knowing the talent that they need to be successful with technology, and that is to look at partners. And again, self-serving, because this is a lot of what we do at Sphere. But I think, and I say this with self-interest, we're seeing a trend where companies are being much more ready to, if not outsource marketing ops completely, then at least look qualified third parties, consultants, technical firms, agencies like ours, to at minimum assist with getting them to that next level. There's a certain, Spear is not alone in this, but there's a lot of really talented firms out there and a whole, as you know, partner ecosystem that's sort of grown up around these technologies. And there's a lot of really talent and cumulative experience and expertise in those firms that companies can, leverage almost on an on-demand, basis.
Yeah.
So, a lot of our engagements in this area, many of them are sort of more campaign oriented, but, we do a lot of, assessments and sort of, for want of a better term, kind of revamps where we'll come in, look at how people use these technologies, do an assessment. This is, what's good, bad, and ugly, and create a plan for helping people kind of get themselves to the next level. And I don't want to paint a picture where, hey, the answer to everything is just hiring a, marketing agency. That's not the case. But I do think that, to be honest, it's a big business driver for us right now because people have laid off folks. Mm-hmm. They're not hiring. They don't have the open job recs that they might have had a year ago. So they're not able to scale or in a way that they might. So they're looking for ways to do this in a more flexible way. So I think outsourcing is one part of the solution. The other area, and it sort of combines the second and third bullets that we have here, and that is, I think people need to reevaluate how they hire marketing operations staff. If you look at open job recs or ads on LinkedIn for, marketing automation specialists, marketing operations managers, people like that, you see almost universally, 3 to 5 years experience in platform X. And guess what? There's a very limited pool of people with that amount of experience, as we were discussing a moment ago. And so, and I say this in part out of experience, because in part it's what we've done at Spear. It's hire people that are more junior, that maybe have had, some exposure or experience with these different platforms, and just train them. Mm-hmm. And just, give them that experience. And, it's a simplistic solution in the sense that I recognize you can't just take someone off the streets and throw them into a Marketo or Pardot and expect them to survive. And there's an investment to be made there. But the fact is, it's just really hard right now to hire those more senior people. And I think if you train someone from the ground up, so to speak, or from a more junior level, you also end up with someone that's trained in your platform, your business model, your market, and the way that you do business. Yeah. And that's a big plus, right? So I think I would suggest that that's also a shift that we're going to see, is people are going to start making investments in more junior staff and kind of looking to train that person into roles versus going out into the market and hiring, you know, that 5+ year experience marketing ops manager. The other thing is those people are blooming expensive as well. So
right? It's such a catch-22
there's
though,
an economic,
I think.
How
Sorry,
so?
Didn't mean to cut you off, Howard. Keep going on.
No, that's fine.
I was just saying it's such a catch-22 between going for that experienced marketing ops, you know, employee, new hire that can just come in, they know what they're doing, it's hands off, and versus investing the time and the resources in someone and really building them up to what you want them, you know, how you want them to perform, and giving them all of your know-how and really guiding them according to how you want business to be run, or marketing ops to be run.
No, it's a great point. And I would say the solution to that, again, with all self-interest, is, you know, and I say this in part because we've worked to this way, especially with our startup clients, is we've come in, got the system up and running, built the foundation, put it in place, you know, the nurture program, built the templates, etc. They've hired a more junior person. Those people have sort of worked, you know, over our shoulder, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then we just slowly kind of handed over the baton to that individual, to where, you know, we can kind of take a step back and be more of just sort of an on-demand, you know, resource. So that's a scenario that I think can work quite well. And to be honest, you know, we come to these engagements, I mean, we've got like, I don't know, probably 30 marketing automation clients, you know, today. You know, we have a really good sense of what's working out there.
Yeah.
And so there's no one marketing automation hire that you're going to make as a company that's going to have that level of experience compared to any agency, consultant, you know, technical firm. I'm trying really hard not to make this a sales pitch.
Well, no, I think I'm in the partners.
For a moment.
No, go.
So
you might be saying what I'm going to say anyway.
Well, what's interesting to me around the question of should marketing ops be outsourced? And when you put that question in the context of where the world is today in this moment, I think what a lot of us have realized is that what has gotten many of our teams to success isn't going to be what's going to get them to success tomorrow in this climate. And so where I think a big challenge, right, with the idea of how can us B2B marketers do more in market automation with less manpower, I think just in general, we're very much aware that this is a very unique time in the world. And so maybe if we were kind of doing whatever we were doing inside of marketing automation 3 months ago, and it was working, it may not be working today. So from my question to you, Howard, is from an agency perspective or consulting firm, do you feel that you're finding within your clients that the use of marketing automation, even for your most advanced users, what has gotten them to success today? Is it the same programs? Is it the same type of models that are working in today's climate? Or do you find that you're working with them now to readjust, brainstorm, and also think different, think bigger, think smaller? Because I think speaking from my team, one of our biggest challenges is that it kind of feels right now that we're all just shooting in the dark.
The biggest shift that we've seen in terms of how people are using marketing automation, I mean, stating the obvious here, is that there are fewer buyers out there right now, right? And so So the top of the funnel, so to speak, has shrunk considerably for a lot of companies. They're not seeing the demand. They're not seeing the net new leads. If they're running ABM, they're not seeing the level of engagement they might have, 3-6 months ago. And that has led companies to take a hard look at both their existing customers and cross-sell, upsell opportunity, and also the have in their CRM database and people that have previously engaged with them, and how they can better leverage those data assets, if you will. So I think there's a big movement to, and whether this is temporary and last as long as COVID does, or whether it's something that'll kind of extend into the next couple of years, remains to be seen. But I think you're seeing a lot of leveraging what we have. So I mean, this is in part, I think, where you guys play really well, because people are doing all this social media activity, and it's something that people can leverage more than maybe what they've done in the past by incorporating that social data into what they're doing in marketing automation. And so it's, again, I think a lot of what we're seeing is, as a result of the current climate, is we're not seeing the new leads. What can we do? In the case of what you guys do, something like social data. So it's like, how do we make the use of the data we have, assets we have, the contacts we have, and kind of get a better return from those investments? Does that answer? I don't know if I addressed your question or not.
You definitely did, and again, I think that's where when you say, right, should marketing ops be outsourced? Again, not a plug, but what I'm seeing is within my own team, right? We've done things like a certain way for X amount of time.
Right.
And so where it becomes helpful is reaching out to, whether it's the consultancies, the agencies, even on social media, right? Like I mentioned earlier, I follow you religiously because you give really interesting hacks and tips, and free to follow you. It's great. But seriously, and oftentimes find myself pondering your posts back on my strategy and with my team, because again, with internal operations, we're so used one way that when you bring in additional minds or additional schools of thought, you're going to help your business grow in a time that growth is very questionable.
Well, I won't argue with you. No, but it's a pitch that we make all the time, as to the value that an agency, or again, a qualified consulting firm, whatever, can bring to a situation like this, whether it's marketing operations or demand generation, or things that we don't even do, like branding or PR or social media. Again, to use us as an example, we're working with 30 companies right now, right? So we have a really broad pool of experience and a big knowledge base for what's working. We've tried a bunch of things with a bunch of different companies. Ours happen to be 90% B2B tech companies. An internal team, no matter how talented and experienced, is going to be, I think, to your point, Jen, insular to a certain extent, as in, right, this is how we do it, and this is how we've always done it. And so having kind of that third party experience, fresh set of eyes, choose your metaphor, kind of to bring in, I think is a plus. Whatever the circumstances, and particularly, frankly, in marketing automation, because I just think, I think one of you said earlier, you don't know what you don't know, right? There are things being tried and tested, and there are things people are doing out there that are successful. And guess what? Things change really rapidly in this space, right? And I mean, I've been at this for longer than I care to mention, but it's, the way we were doing and constructing lead nurture campaigns 5-10 years ago is very different from the way we do it now. The way we do lead scoring is different now than the way we did it 5 years. So there are things that that are constantly in motion, and it's more difficult, not impossible, but more difficult for an internal team, I think, to do that without the benefit of some third party experience. So I think there's a role to play for a valued partner here. To what extent, and every company is going to be different. Yeah. That's something where you outsource an entire function, or you just have someone that you can call upon for advice is up to you.
Phone a friend.
So, yeah. That's right.
Let me just call up Howard quickly. I'll use my phone a friend option today. No, I love that. Myself being in the partner space, I see firsthand how well partners can complement any organization, where whether it's technology partners, whether it's strategic partners, whether it's business and referral partners, there's always a complementary aspect to it where one company is maybe lacking, or they just don't excel in something in one specific function. That's where partners come in handy. And I think partners are a really important part of any ecosystem for any organization. And I don't think it's any different for a marketing team. But because nobody can know what tomorrow will bring, I think like you said, Howard, it's this friendly combination of use what you have. If you don't have trade shows or conferences, but you do have social media, use social media. If you don't have that experienced marketing ops, the individual who can really take you beyond, reach out to your, friendly agencies and your consultancy firms and consult with them and see what can bring you those results. So with that, I want to move over to our next topic, which is creating that strategic vision. And I'd love to hear how, I want to learn a little bit more how implementing a strategy can help streamline and prove results for marketing ops, instead of kind of just jumping in blindly and sending emails. What can a strategy do for that, for that organization and for that department?
I want to preface this by saying, or rather by acknowledging that. Oh,
sorry.
There we go. By acknowledging that. No, that's all right. It's good. Keeps me on my toes. By acknowledging the challenge that doing this represents for a lot of companies. As we talked about earlier on, it's very easy for companies to get into, especially with the pace of business today, to get into this campaign mode where you're always just trying to get ahead of the webinar invitation that needs to go out on Tuesday, kinds of deliverables. And it's easy for us to sit here as we are telling people that they really should do a strategic plan when we all have a million things that we're trying to do in any given week. However, having said that, so with that kind of caveat, taking a step back at some point and really just asking yourself, what are we trying to achieve here with marketing automation? Why are we making this investment of, many thousands of dollars per month? And what are we looking to gain from it is a critical part of the puzzle. And it's something that too few companies ask. And when we engage with companies, it's one of the first questions we ask is, what are you looking to do here? And you know what? Sometimes companies don't know. Sometimes companies buy the software because it's sort of, we're supposed to have a Marketo.
And it's shiny and it's new and it's
shiny. Well, it's not even, I mean,
same thing at Octopus. We are looking at Octopus because we're supposed to be on social media.
Yeah.
Help us. We see the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think it's important to kind of, and we can bring kind of, a range of kind of multiple choice answers to that discussion, saying, well, look, here are 12 things that other companies are looking to achieve with marketing automation. Which of these kind of hit home for you, and which of these are priorities? And it's very different from one company to the next. For one, it might be, well, we're generating a bunch of leads, but we need to convert more leads into sales conversations and ultimately, pipeline. For others, it might be a customer marketing initiative, right? And we're looking to kind of reduce churn or, increase lifetime customer value, increase customer retention. For others, it's about, moving leads through the pipeline. It might be a partner marketing initiative, Shani, right? And increasing kind of sell-through, or et cetera, et cetera. So ultimately, what are you looking to do here? And what are the metrics that you're going to use to measure success against those objectives?
Yep.
So if it's lead conversion, which is sort of the classic business case for marketing automation, what's the metric? Is it lead to MQL? Is it lead to close? Is it length of sales cycle? Is it, what number are we going to use to measure the success of this program? Because it's the oldest chestnut in the book to say, if you don't know what you're measuring, you'll never get there, right? So you need to have some sort of by which you're going to measure the success of this technology. And so those are the big things, the big questions. What are you looking to achieve, and how you're going to measure? And it sounds so basic, yet these are questions that, believe me, there are a lot of companies out there that have just never gotten around to asking them, because again, they're just sort of too busy sending out emails, as we all do. So
they're basic questions, but I think that they're also somewhat intimidating questions. And I say that because when we're onboarding customers with Octopus, we ask those same questions with regards to social. What are your social KPIs? What are you being measured on? And sometimes they have the answer. Sometimes it's easy, and we can just jot that down and go with the flow. And sometimes there's really this sheer panic. But strategies, luckily we're not in the Neanderthal times. These things aren't written in stone, right? Strategies change. Right. It's a lot, I think, of trial and error. And I think people, it's like you said, it's just taking that step and at some point evaluating it. If the point of marketing automation is just sending out emails, well then great, just send out those emails and we can keep the expectations level set with that. But if you do want more, and if you are looking to get more out of it, then let's have that conversation. Let's see what the capabilities are. Let's see what's realistic, and kind of go with that.
And you guys are in a unique scenario, you Octopus, because, if you talk to people about what they're trying to achieve with social media has, disagree with me, please, if I'm off base here, but has historically been unmeasurable.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, unmeasurable from a business standpoint, unless you're just counting likes and followers, and we can all question ultimately the business value of those kinds of numbers, right? So it's really, a part of this discussion that I think companies need to have, and these discussions that we try to kind of initiate with our clients, is not just why did you buy the software and what are you trying to do, but what are areas that you might think about impacting that aren't even on the radar for you? Social media being one, right? I mean, almost everyone, at least in the companies that we work with, B2B tech, have some sort of social media presence. It's a small minority that are doing anything strategic with that social media in a manner that they can ultimately measure the value of it. So, one of the things that we try to do is not just say, well, what have you decided is the key business metric, but here are some other areas that people are, using marketing automation and associated technologies to achieve business value. Which of these resonate with you? And if you talk about things like social media or customer marketing, for example, people will, you know what? We've thought about this as a lead nurturing tool. We haven't really even thought about bringing it to bear against, customer marketing or social media or whatever else. So it's about kind of broadening people's, not horizons, but kind of expanding the way they think about this technology, that I think is also a path to ultimately getting more value from their investment. So.
Definitely.
Yeah. We did mention, I know in preparing this deck, there's another bullet here that I just want to kind of touch on real quick. In the absence of a strategic plan, which and I think one of you said is can be an intimidating notion, right? And also, you know, people kind of want quick wins all the time, right? This is the kind of the world we live in. There are things you can do at the risk of sounding contradictory. There are things in space to gain more value quickly in the absence of, or maybe in parallel with, creating a more strategic plan. So I literally just wrote on LinkedIn yesterday, Jen, about like nurturing at the top of the funnel. And it's something that, I mean, a lot of companies do it, but few do it well. The idea being that, you know, as leads come into the system, that's when you need to start nurturing, not a month down the road when the sales reps have given up trying to reach that person, but literally day one. And we've seen enormous value from integrating lead nurturing, perhaps in concert with a BDR team at that a very early stage of the lead process. Well, that's not that difficult to do, right? I mean, it might be as simple as a quick, you know, 3 email sequence, or you know, etc. And that can be a quick win. You know, looking at a solution like, you know, Octopost, you know, to layer into the overall solution as a means of kind of integrating. I'm sorry, I'm talking to the experts here, so forgive me. But you know, as a way of but a way of you know, a way of integrating, you know, social data and social activity and having that trigger. I mean, that can be I'm not going to say it's a, you know, a overnight thing, but that can be a relatively simple thing to do, particularly if you've got a robust social media effort happening that you're simply not measuring or triggering off in terms of campaigns and stuff. So, you know, a strategic plan, going back to the previous slide, is critically important. And I think it's the foundation for success for marketing automation and marketing ops in general for a lot of companies. But that doesn't exclude the possibility of, you know, doing things in more ad hoc fashion and looking for those, you know, quick wins. So one of the things that we do when we engage with clients is look for those quick wins that we can, you know, we've never set up lead scoring. Okay, let's do that, right? Because that's something that's relatively simple to do, and it's going to do X, Y, and Z for you, and we can make that change, make that improvement, whilst we're building kind of a bigger, better, you know, engine, right? So
absolutely, and this may lead into our next.
Please give us a segue, Jen.
Question or discussion. But I think what I'm hearing, Howard, is kind of this concept of marginal gains. And I know from the Octopost side, and we'll share a little bit about our company culture now. But at every one of our hands-on meetings, and just driven into our head to open every sales meeting, was kind of this idea about how you can improve tiny things along the way. So it's exactly what you're saying. So when it comes to marketing automation, maybe it's not, okay, let's lay down a huge strategy tomorrow and make all these changes tomorrow for this huge finale of an incredible, successful marketing plan. Right, the Tour of France, they made all of these small adjustments along the way from, you know, maybe they brought their own mattresses to the hotels to sleep on, right? There's this whole story about
Dave
how they improved
and Sky Sports.
Yeah,
I'm a big cycling fan. Yeah, absolutely.
Inspiring to read. And I think, you know, again, at Octopost, we really stick to that. We talk about marginal gains all of the time internally. And I think just hearing you speak about kind of the quick win, it's that how can I improve by 1% and or a marginal gain to get those quick wins, and then that gives you the confidence to keep moving forward, and before you know it, hopefully you have this massive plan. But I think that
I do think no, I think you're exactly right, and I think there's value there. I also think the risk in that strategy is not the risk per se, but I don't think you can adopt a marginal gain strategy in the absence of a larger plan.
Correct.
Right. So there are if you can, you know, pick up, things here and there and make marginal improvements, great. But ultimately, it's really about kind of assessing and putting together, a plan for ultimately where you want to get to, even if you then kind of prioritize all those deliverables and those changes and kind of roll them out over time. Because I think, again, in the context of what we were describing earlier, where people kind of get into kind of more tactical mode, if all you do is those little changes, you'll never get there. But you know what? In today's economic climate, with everything's going through, marginal gains are key and valid, and I think it makes a lot of sense. So I love the cycling analogy.
Yeah.
We have Howard's biggest fan on the call today, Jen Goodman.
I need to bring more cycling metaphors into my LinkedIn posts, clearly. So
the day you do that, sharing that post far and wide, my friend.
Okay. All right. So noted.
Just give her a little mention also.
Okay, will do. Yeah.
All right, guys. So to start wrapping this up, I think the three of us, we could go on for hours, but for our audience, to start wrapping some things up, what would be some of your key takeaways for really getting the absolute most out of marketing automation and for setting our audience up with success? Not just right now, but even for the future. I know we spoke about these marginal gains, but you have a couple of other really valid points here. So I'd love to hear a little bit more, Howard.
Yeah. One is certification. There's a lot of MarTech certifications out in the market right now. All the big marketing automation players offer them. Yes, in part they're a way for that marketing technology company to kind of get their brand out there, etc. But I think they're really valuable things to do. So we encourage our team, we encourage our clients to take advantage of that training and those certification programs and get people, because you know what, it's in today's market, it never hurts to have another merit badge on your LinkedIn profile.
Absolutely.
And another skill set, etc. So I'm really big on that, self-improvement and training and kind of exposing yourself to kind of new technologies. Mm-hmm. The second thing that I'd say, and this kind of goes back to the whole kind of strategic plan, but it's focus on goals and not functionality. So there's a tendency in MarTech to want to bells and whistles and use features for the sake of using features. And for us, it's the technology is a means to an end, right? Ultimately, it's about what is the business value, what are the business goals that you're trying to achieve, and then looking at how you achieve them. So I talked about lead scoring early on. I mean, that's a feature that some people turn on and some don't, and some turn it on and never use it, etc. It's not essential that using a marketing automation platform use lead scoring, lead grading, whatever the case may be. It's more about what lead score is going to do for you, right? It's the same, I would argue, for something like what you guys do, relative to social media. I mean, it's a great thing to have, don't get me wrong, but it's more about what are we trying to achieve with that kind of functionality at our disposal than it is about making sure that we've got every software feature available to us. And then the third, I think, aligns pretty nicely with what we were just discussing, and that's just, look, you can't reinvent the wheel. Budgets aren't what they were 6 months ago. Staff isn't what it was. Head counts aren't what it was 6 months ago. So look for opportunities, marginal gains, incremental change, right? Where can we make improvements based on what we're doing to get closer to ultimately where we want to be. Those are my recommendations. So, and hire a qualified marketing agency as a strategic partner as number 4. Bonus tip number 4.
That one's on Howard.
Hire an agency, right? No, I'm.
Jen, did you have anything on your end that you might add to some of the as a takeaway for success in marketing automation?
I mean, this may sound like a joke, but I will say this with a straight face. If Howard was on the call or not on the call, follow Howard on LinkedIn. I'll tell you why, because he's posting really helpful information about all aspects of marketing, including marketing automation, and he is in my head 24/7.
Oh,
and
dear.
There are times, there was a post you actually posted about webinars, and about,
I remember that it made my heart stop.
Well, see, they're powerful posts, right? They stop and make you think. So again, even if right now you don't have the resources, you don't have the experience, right? Wherever you feel you may be lacking, I would say to set yourself up for success, you could follow Howard, because again, the way that you're writing on LinkedIn, I think, is a very model way to be sharing information with audiences right now, to set yourself up for success, because you're, at least when it comes to what I'm experiencing with your posts, is that I find like you'll say something and maybe I had been thinking about it, but you'll kind of validate it in your post. And then when I see your post, again, because you're that consultancy, the expert, I'm like, oh, well, if Howard said it, maybe I'll look into that a little bit more. And again, it's, sorry, Howard, but it's free to follow you. So I really do find your post helping me set up Octopost for success. So thank you. I get to thank you in person or virtually.
You're very kind.
And I think the second thing, in kind of in regards to that social realm, right? Like, I'm following Howard on LinkedIn, but don't be afraid to reach out or spark conversations with other people in the industry, to strike up a conversation or to learn more, to better yourself. Again, it falls right back into, Howard, what you said about, making those incremental changes. But I think social media, as many of us marketers are saying, oh, how can we, brand awareness and growing reach and amplify? But at the end of the day, using LinkedIn for what it was originally designed for, right? Networking, and just reaching out to your network at a time when many of us are in a situation where what's best thing to be doing. So again, I find myself reading through LinkedIn groups again, the LinkedIn hashtags. I find like digital transformation is one I'm very interested in. But I'm seeing what other marketers are doing and trying to learn from what I'm seeing on social and having those discussions with relevant people. I think that is something that I've just been conscious of doing. And so, Howard, thank you for being a part of that network that I find so valuable. And again, that's one of my 1% that I've really been paying attention to every morning, is who can I learn from? Who can I follow? Who's speaking with value?
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. Underneath these headphones, my ears are red. So
I love that, and I think, by the way, she's absolutely right. It's following industry thought leaders and people that have something valuable to give, and because we can't come to your offices and meet you face to face and have these discussions, we're doing what we can, and we're tracking that, and we're following it through social, and we're having these conversations on social. So really just make the most of what you have, leverage what you have, and make those incremental changes. I think that that's a really crucial thing. You can't expect to do it all in one go, but if you build up to it and you motivate yourself to that larger success, that larger strategy, I think it goes a long way.
Agreed.
Awesome.
All right. So guys,
Fantastic.
that was really fun. I want to thank the two of you again for joining, for sharing this valuable information. I learned a lot, and I'm sure the audience learned a ton. We are going to continue with this series, so stay tuned for our next episode, our next social workshop, excuse me. And in the meantime, if anyone in the audience has any questions, you can feel free to reach out to us via email. We'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to Howard, to Jen, or myself. And until the next workshop, stay healthy, stay positive, stay safe, and we will be speaking soon. Thank you both again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.